Most people think friendships end because someone did something wrong, but many actually end because someone did something right. Because success doesn't just change what you can afford, it changes what you focus on, what you value, what feels normal to you. And something else changes too: how people measure themselves when they stand next to you. Because the moment two people stop growing at the same speed, comparison quietly enters the relationship. And once comparison enters a friendship, the dynamic almost never stays the same. Not because anyone became arrogant, not because anyone became fake, but because success changes position, and position changes how people see themselves around you. And here's the part nobody talks about. Some friendships aren't built to survive unequal momentum. At first, nothing dramatic happens. We still talk, we still text, we still meet sometimes. From the outside, the friendship looks the same, but small things begin changing. Conversations start taking different directions. The problems you talk about are no longer the same. The decisions you are making start coming from different realities. One person is thinking about stability, the other is thinking about survival. One is planning ahead, the other is trying to stay afloat. And neither person is wrong, but the overlap that once held the friendship together starts getting smaller. You may notice yourself hesitating before talking about certain wins. You may notice them hesitating before talking about certain struggles. Not because trust disappeared, but because relatability started changing. And this is where many friendships begin experiencing quiet pressure, not from conflict, from divergence. Because friendships often grow strongest when people are solving similar problems. But when the problems change, the connection sometimes has to renegotiate itself. And most people never realize this is happening while it happens. They just feel something becoming slightly harder, slightly less natural, slightly more effort to maintain what once felt automatic. Most people never notice the exact moment the shift begins, because it rarely starts with something obvious. It usually starts with small recalculations happening internally. People naturally measure their progress against those closest to them, not out of jealousy, out of orientation. Humans constantly try to understand where they stand, and friendships are often where that measurement happens most quietly, because friends are the closest reference points we have. But when one person's life starts changing faster, the reference point changes too. The same success that feels normal to you may start feeling like pressure to someone else. The same stability that gives you peace may remind someone else what they don't have yet. And this is where something subtle but powerful can begin happening. Comparison enters without invitation, not spoken, not acknowledged, but felt. And once comparison becomes part of the emotional background, even good news can start carrying tension, because what feels like progress to one person can start feeling like distance to another. This is why many friendships that weaken after success were not built on conflict to begin with. They were built on shared context, shared limitations, shared experiences, and shared expectations about what life looked like. And when that context changes, the structure underneath the friendship sometimes changes with it. Not because either person became worse, but because the environment that made the connection effortless is no longer the same. One person may start talking about investments, the other about bills. One about long-term plans, the other about immediate problems. And neither conversation is wrong, but they begin coming from different worlds. This is why many people misinterpret what is happening. They think someone became distant emotionally, when often what changed first was position. And position quietly changes how comfortable people feel being fully themselves around each other. Because once lifestyles begin separating, even small differences can start feeling bigger than they actually are. And this is where many friendships begin drifting, not from disagreement, but from misalignment. This is where many people begin feeling a pressure they never expected success to create. Because getting ahead often does not make people want to leave their friendships, it often makes them want to protect them. You may notice yourself filtering what you share, downplaying progress, avoiding details about opportunities, not because you want to hide your life, because you don't want to create distance. You may find yourself trying to stay relatable instead of being fully honest about how your priorities are changing. And most people never admit how much energy this takes. Managing how much of your growth feels safe to show, trying to move forward without making others feel left behind, trying to celebrate quietly, trying to succeed without changing the emotional balance of the friendship. And this is where success can start creating a quiet loyalty conflict between continuing to grow and continuing to belong in the same way. Because part of you wants to keep moving, but another part wants to remain familiar to the people who knew you before things started changing. And that balancing act can become exhausting in ways nobody prepares you for. What makes this difficult is that it often has nothing to do with envy. Many friendships weaken without anyone feeling hostility. What changes is emotional equilibrium. Friendships tend to stabilize when both people feel psychologically equal, not identical, but comparable. When one life starts accelerating, that balance can quietly shift, and humans are very sensitive to perceived imbalance, not because they are shallow, because equality inside close relationships creates emotional safety. When that equality starts feeling uncertain, people sometimes unconsciously protect themselves. Sometimes that means pulling back slightly. Sometimes it means changing topics. Sometimes it means investing less emotionally, not out of rejection, but out of adjustment. Because when someone close to us changes levels, we often have to redefine how we see ourselves next to them, and not everyone knows how to do that comfortably. This is why some friendships fade without any one dramatic ending. No fight, no betrayal, just gradual emotional repositioning that neither person fully understands while it is happening. Once this shift begins, behavior often starts changing in small ways. You may find yourself choosing silence where you once shared openly, letting certain conversations pass without adding your perspective, avoiding mentioning things that would have felt normal before, not because you became secretive, because you were trying to protect something that still matters to you. This is where many people begin managing emotional impact instead of just living their lives, measuring what feels safe to say, measuring what might create discomfort, trying to keep the friendship in the same emotional place even when life is moving forward. And over time, this can quietly change how authentic people feel inside their relationships. Less spontaneity, more calculation, less natural sharing, more editing, not because the friendship lost value, but because maintaining it now requires navigation that did not exist before. And this is where many people begin feeling something they can't easily explain. Not resentment, not regret, just a quiet awareness that growth sometimes comes with social friction no one talks about. Most people expect success to change their opportunities. Fewer expect it to change which relationships feel effortless. Because sometimes friendships don't end because people stop caring. Sometimes they end because people stop standing in the same place. And when momentum separates two lives, connection sometimes has to work harder than it used to.